to our journey to ancient Egypt. Can you guess what topic we're going to investigate today? Well, last time we talked about games, sports and leisure, but we haven't heard anything about school scribes or hieroglyphs, so let's start talking about these and also about how they fascinated generations of European scholars since the Renaissance. This was the time when ancient Egypt was rediscovered by the West and gave rise to what became known as the science of Orientalism. Ancient Egyptians had their very own system of writing, which was based on pictograms called hieroglyphs. Let us consider the etymology of the word, which is to say the origin of it. In ancient Greek, the meaning of hieroglyphus was sacred scribe, as it derived from hieros, which referred to sacred, and glyphs, which meant to engrave. Here are some facts about hieroglyphs. As I just mentioned, the ancient Egyptians used picture words to write, and they were called hieroglyphs. It was a very symbolic way of communication. By symbolic, I mean that they used a very visual system to convey meaning. While some of the symbols represented sounds like or letters, others represented entire words. Ancient Egyptians had a very vast alphabet and only few people could master it at the time, since universal education was not an option. Hieroglyphics were a very complicated and complex way of writing involving thousands of symbols, and there might be some hieroglyphs that are still for us to discover. Hieroglyphs were different from how we write in many ways. It could be written in almost every direction wanted. Left to right to left, or bottom to top. The reader would figure out which way to read it by the direction of the symbols. They didn't use any punctuation. One of the goals in writing hieroglyphic was that the writing would look like art and be beautiful to look at. A single picture symbol could stand for a whole word called an ideogram, or a sound called phonogram. For example, a picture of an eye could mean the word I or the letter I. Scribes. Since not everyone learned to read and write in ancient Egypt, only those who were highly educated could understand the complex system of hieroglyphs. Among them were the scribes, professional copyists who were very important to society. It took years of study and practice to be able to do it. Scribes would start training at a very young age of 6 or 7. To become a scribe, you had to attend this special school for scribes. At this school, you would learn how to read and write complicated script, and it could take 4 to 5 years for a person to go through scribe school. Most often, it was the children of scribes who became scribes. Students spent a lot of time practicing signs by copying them onto sheets of paper. Old pieces of pottery or flakes of limestone, but it was all worth the effort because being a scribe was a good job. In ancient Egypt, scribes didn't have to pay taxes or enter the army. They were very highly thought of in society. A very famous scribe was Imhotep, who we met in earlier installments of this journey to ancient Egypt. He became high priest of the sun, designed the first pyramid, and was later turned into a god. Well, now that you know how to become a trained scribe, you might wonder, where could one find hieroglyphs? The ancient Egyptians often wrote on tablets or walls, and we all know it because so many lovely buildings were adorned with them and have survived until the present day. However, they also wrote on a type of paper called papyrus. Papyrus paper was made from a tall reed-like plant called papyrus. The Egyptians would use strips of the inner stem of the plant to make the paper. They would make 2 layers of strips, the horizontal and other vertical. Then they would cover it in a linen cloth and apply pressure with a mallet or stones. The strips would bing together over time, making a single flat sheet to write on. Scribes usually wrote on papyrus with reed brushes dipped in ink, keeping the same tradition along a very long timeline. The ancient Egyptians made ink by grinding brightly coloured minerals into powder, then mixing the powder with liquid so that it was easier to apply. By the way, do you know who was the first person to solve the mystery of ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs? When Europeans started to rediscover the wonders of ancient Egypt, they were struck by the mysterious hieroglyphs. No one could figure out how to decipher them in spite of all efforts, as scholars from all around Europe were attempting to understand what these symbols meant. One of them cracked the code. French Egyptologist Jean-François Champollion, who worked on the basis of Rosetta Stone, which had been discovered in 1799 by a French soldier, Pierre-François Bouchard, in the oasis of Rosetta near Alexandrie. This stone had the same message written in both ancient Egyptian and ancient Greek, and written in hieroglyphic, demotic, Egyptian and Greek. This was important because it helped to translate that the hieroglyphs said could be used to help translate other hieroglyphs as well. At the age of 16, Champollion had already mastered 6 ancient Oriental languages, in addition to Latin and Greek. Deciphering hieroglyphs became his constant preoccupation following the modest success of the English physicist Thomas Young in an attempt to decipher the Rosetta Stone. Champollion at last began to piece together the puzzle of the hieroglyphs. He was the first to recognize that some of the signs were alphabetic, some syllabic, and some determinative. That is to say, standing for a whole idea or object previously expressed. Though many doors still await opening, the key to understand ancient Egypt has last been found. In addition to ancient grammar and dictionary, he published many important works. We can see here the print of his letters and diaries of his travels to Egypt. His discoveries were part of the parcel of the taste for ancient Egypt that swept through Europe after the Napoleonic invasion of Egypt in 1798 and kept Europeans crazy about Egypt. Generations of artists produced a wealth of records and the buildings and historic sites in ancient Egypt. Paintings, watercolors, and even from the mid-19th century onwards, photographs. This rich material has inspired some notable works by the likes of the Scottish artist David Roberts, the British artist William Henry Barnett, the English politician Baron Radcliffe, John Stuart Wortley, the French diplomat, writer and engraver Dominique Vivant Denon, or the French photographer Maxime Duchamp, in addition to the founder of the Egyptian Museum in Cairo, Frenchman Auguste Mariette Bachar. The corpus they produced is unique in scope and breadth, and we are fortunate to have all these testimonies at our disposal to witness what ancient Egyptian sites looked like before the advent of a mass tourism. There are some lovely coffee table books produced on the basis of this corpus, such as, for instance, this one. So now it is time to get our books and continue this journey through your readings. You will also find some impressive images that these artists produced for us to enjoy in the 21st century. Bye bye and take care.